Hello, everybody. Welcome to yet another episode of the Quad Damage Podcast, where we are three strong. I'm one of your hosts for now, High Functioning Medium, joined by Robert Yep.
Hi.
Yeah, pause for effect. Joined by returning badass Hyacsho. Thanks so much for joining us, man.
Hello, everyone.
Very excited to get up very early in the morning to hang out. All of our time zones converge for a mildly convenient way. So yeah, let's get into it.
Okay.
But not before.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get booming.
Are we doing it? Okay.
Yeah,
wait,
yeah.
Sorry, we're gonna have to do it. Let's try that again. One more time. I'm ready.
Okay. Right. 3, 2, 1. Let's get booming.
Get booming.
Sorry, I f***ed that up.
I have no idea what the fuck we're going to be talking about today. I just know that Prodeus was the one that I suggested it to Hyacsho, and that's purely because Humble Games closed down, so I thought, maybe show a bit of love, and their game is what? What do you mean?
We can talk about that. What the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
Everyone at Humble Games got laid off, the entire company.
That is so unpleasant to hear. They've produced published a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. It was
I
like
just bumped into some things I reviewed, and I was like, "Oh, look, it's Humble again. How neat!"
Yeah, three
Are you
days
talking
ago.
about is Humble Games Bundle the same as the people who published what was that brawler thing?
Brawlhalla, I think
That
I'm
would
thinking
be-
of.
Brawlhalla?
No, it's that fuck. What is that game?
They did Forager. They did Moonscars. I'm
Midnight
looking at
Express
it
or
now.
Midnight Fight Express.
So apparently,
Yeah.
The same.
Humble Games Publishing and HumbleBundle are two different things. And Humble
Okay,
Games,
fair
the
enough.
publishing company, is owned by the company that owns IGN, and has basically just decided we don't want Humble Games anymore, and has let everyone go.
But wait, sorry, this is okay. So when I first heard the news of this, I was just like, all right, so Humble Games, that's like HumbleBundle, right? I actually didn't know, I didn't think too much of it. I was just like, that's weird, but okay, I'm sure that's, gonna figure itself out. But I'm just going through their games list now of games that they've made. This is absolutely ridiculous. How can a company like this go under? Like, we've got Unpacked,
Yeah.
we've got Void Bastards. We've got, I'm just going to name a few quickly, right? Unpacked, Void Bastards, Signalis,
Yeah.
all right? Prodeus.
Little game.
Yeah, a little game you might have heard of called Signalis. Moonscars, Forager, massive indie title back in the day. They've just published Path of the Teal Lotus.
Yeah.
I
That
mean,
looked good.
that-
They were
Yeah,
in profit,
like
but
what the hell, man?
from what I read is that basically they didn't want a games publishing thing because they didn't understand it. They just see we put money into something, we expect to see money back. They don't understand that there is a development cycle and that they may not see any money from a games publisher for 3 years. Or
It's so
something.
strange. It's so strange you say that. It's almost like someone that is completely unqualified for their position is leading a company or something. This is bizarre. It's almost like this is such a strange thing that I've not heard of in the last 4 years that keeps happening with
Yeah.
every fucking publisher in games. It's just like, what are you doing, man? I just keep picturing these dudes in bloody white shirts and ties that don't make sense, and then they just make these stupid ass decisions.
Well, that's what they are.
What the fuck is that?
They're bean counters. They're not game developers. They don't understand the process. They understand the charts and the accounting.
And even then, they seem so short-sighted. Like, a lot of them are more worried about this year's share prices. In the last year or so, we've seen so many publishers, gaming companies, whatever the fuck, just they are going mask off so often, where they're like, oh no, now you're going to pay for this and you can pay for that. Look at a good recent example was the way Apex Legends updated. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah, double the pay.
That's been coming double the price of their Game Pass or their Battle Pass or whatever, but then also added in so many extra things that you now need to pay for. It's just completely going mask off. It's just like, now it's time to milk. Like, and then they're just going in. All these executive companies, and that's what they are. They're just commercial executive companies. They're not actual gaming companies anymore. These are just products to them, and it's disgusting. Like it's. Sorry, obviously I'm a little triggered by this shit, but it's a case of like, how can you put all that effort and energy into making? They are products. Let's be real, but putting all that energy and effort into a company and a series of games, by definition, that do well, but they don't do that well. They do they did make money, but that it didn't affect the gross product or the gross what's it, the net was too low. Our shareholders are only going to get them $1,000 dividends this year instead of the 10,000 that they would deserve it. And then you ask the executive, why were they expecting a $10,000 dividend? Oh, because I said so, like in the last earnings thing. Well, why did you say that if that seemed unrealistic? Oops, I guess we better sell these to make it. Because they don't care. They'll just, in 4 or 5 years, there'll be a whole bunch of other freaking developing companies and publishers that they're going to take advantage of again, and then we'll see. I mean, it's just a good example now is the whole EA thing and Activision thing. They're all the same company in my head at the end of the day. But like all that bullshit of where we didn't manage to get that, that lucrative collusion deal in Europe. We didn't manage to get that done, guys. So the share price is now tanking. Oops, who could have seen that in Europe of all places? But hey, I guess we're just going to have to sell every single studio we've bought over the last 10 years to try and make our money back. That is so short-sighted and stupid. And where are the leadership? None of the executive branch have been fired. None of them, and if they have been fired, had a beautiful golden parachute. Yeah. But at the end of the day, all these poor developers have to go home to their families and say, hey, guys, well, look, Daddy made a bad decision. I'm assuming they're men. Daddy made a bad decision. They're not just. It's a bad decision. Guess I'm going to have to go and work at the post office, and you're not getting presents or anything this year. Or you know what? Maybe not this month. It's just bullshit. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Well, no,
we can talk about.
You are absolutely right, though. As soon as a company goes public and is floated on the stock market, its allegiance is to its shareholders. The whole point of it is that those shareholders obviously buy into the company and own a stake in it, and therefore you must keep them happy by having the chart going up. The easiest way, if you're having a rough time, is it should really be written into law that you can't lay off anyone if your company is in profit. The profit has to be exceeded so that before you actually start looking to cut back. And the first people that should be cut back are things like leadership bonus and that sort of thing. You're meant to lead by example, and if you are failing in your job to make that company profit, then it should be your bonus that is cut. But they don't do that
without even hesitation.
Yeah,
exactly. Somehow this executive C-suite branch are somehow untouchable. Somehow they have these amazing skills that no one else has, which they don't. I've met more CEOs in my life than I ever thought I would. And most of them are just either they're normal people or I've had a few wonderful who are utterly humble, but they're very, very far between. But most of them are just these arrogant douchebags that walk in, say a few things, fire a bunch of people, and then leave. Yeah. That's it. And somehow that is some bizarre, crazy skill. Back in the day, and I say like back in the day as if I'm this ancient chap, but many, 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 many years ago, I forget the decade, but a CEO was actually not that important.
Yeah.
All right, it was not that important. There was this position that they had because there needed to be someone at the top making decisions, right? But they didn't care that they didn't have the weight that they have today. They were just these figureheads, if anything like that. What it did come down to was your operations people, which makes sense. And even if you think about it, like, how can you have so your shareholders, obviously, when you put it on the exchange and all that jazz, or you go public or you sell privately or whatever, obviously you're adhering to what they are looking for to make the line go up, right? But if you don't create products that people enjoy or like, or if you mismanage your shareholders' expectations and the line doesn't go up quick enough, or whatever the case may be, surely someone else is at fault. It makes no sense. And what makes it worse is the injustice of this, that no one is being held accountable for.
Yeah.
That's what I think makes it worse. Anyway.
Well, the executives will never, to them it's always somebody else's fault. This is why I despise the term right sizing. Because when a company starts talking about right-sizing
I'm not familiar.
what they mean by right size is that we want to get rid of a bunch of workforce and double up on the job responsibilities of the remaining people so that we are the right size. It indicates that they are somewhat bloated, and it's their way of subconsciously telling you that we're going to fire some people, but you're going to be okay with it because we're currently bloated right now and what we're doing is the right thing. No, when you look at the CEO of what's it called, of EA, Andrew Davis or something, I think his name is, the man makes well over 30 million a year. And then, so even if EA were to go bust, all the profit disappears, that one man's bonus, let alone his salary, can keep everyone employed. The only problem that they've got at the moment is that they're so short-sighted that they want money here and now, and all they care about is, if this game lasts for 10 hours, how can we monetize every moment of that, you know? And
exactly.
They don't give a damn about the quality of it because they're not game developers. They don't understand that, just as I said in the Discord chat, if you want us as the media and as game, you know, players to shill for your game, you need to make a game worth shilling for, and they don't do that. They think backwards. They think from the monetization model and how can we make a game around that, not how can we make a fantastic game and then perhaps, you know, look at monetization methods past the initial sale. It's absolutely fucking stupid.
I mean, and what makes it worse is that we have evidence in the market, modern AAA games that were single player, that were not made to be monetizable. In Doom Eternal, for example, that made a disgusting amount of money. Yeah. Oh, there we go. Exactly. Doom Eternal. I'm going to use Doom for everything. Ain't that me? But like, it's a good example of
works on everything.
Single player, right? Single player experience that dominated the market for when it launched, made a lot of money for the developers and publishers, was brilliant. But apparently that's not good enough. You have to hyper monetize, you have to microtransact everything to the nth degree, and it's just then you create a shittier product. All right. I think, like, I am of the opinion that online games, DLC, some microtransactions can be a good thing for a certain style of game if it's done correctly. But if it becomes predatory, if it becomes abusive, I mean, we see it with the loot box problem, where that's basically gambling. You see it like, oh, we'll just do cosmetics, and that's fine. But again, you can see when something is done in a way that is essentially enticing you in every second. Then a game, the main campaign of a game just becomes a glorified advertisement for you to buy more product. And that's the bullshit. Okay. Look at, we were talking, I just had a stream now before this, which is probably why I'm chatty, but the idea we were talking about was Halo Infinite. The Halo Infinite single player campaign was an ad for Halo multiplayer. All right. They promised us DLC. They promised us story. They promised us updates. We got sweet fuck all since that game has been released. And then they still charge us.
No, we had campaign co-op. Wait.
I'm sorry?
So no, we had campaign co-op. Wait.
How's that story?
No, we didn't. Yeah. You are correct.
Exactly. You know, and then
all the things they said
came a year later.
Yeah, I think with I mean, going back to EA.
Sorry, I'm ranting. I'm ranting a lot today, apparently.
Well, that's good. You know, it's always good to
let it out.
Yeah. I'd rather that than sit there silent. You know, I mean, what sort of podcast would it be if we all just sat there going all the time?
Telepathy.
Yeah, I'm sweating like
getting pretty good at this.
Sweating like a mofo sitting next to this goddamn
door. If I may interject, one thing that's been kind of building on my mind is, doesn't it seem obvious that kind of like when you see content mill YouTube content and you're like, they're really appealing to the lowest, they're doing as little work as possible, and then just sort of hydra heading everything out where it kind of goes and it just multiplies. That's exactly the way it feels. It feels like it's so disrespectful in the way that they'll just put that stuff on the face of gamers and go, you guys are this ravenous and this consumer oriented anyway that I think you'll fall for this, that I'm just going to put it, it's going to be right out there. All my cards on the table, you know, buy in if you wish.
So right.
And you probably will, because why wouldn't you? I mean, what's stopping you? And it's not bad that I say it's not bad. It's not inherently, like, they're not forcing you to do anything, but it's the attitude that we can keep parting out everything eventually. And they are doing that more and more. I mean, it used to be when you pre-ordered something, you got something kind of cool, right? I remember back in like 2014, 2015, I was at GameStop, and you were actually interested in preserving those copies for the customers of whatever extra mission or this or that. It didn't cost anybody anything extra. And it felt like you were getting kind of like a cool little end, because then those copies actually mattered. And now it's gotten to the point, I don't even know why they do this, that there is no distinction between day one editions of anything. It's all the same stuff. Like even when I was there, it changed just in the 2014, 2015 kind of space that I noticed. Seeing product come in, all the pre-order bonuses were in every copy. It didn't matter. You didn't really need to pre-order, so why are you forcing this anyway? So they didn't even commit to that exclusivity. And now it's gotten to the point where it's like this sort of fake exclusivity where they're like, well, if you pay us $50 more, we'll give you.
I hate that shit, man.
And it's like, and it's almost like a game to see like how brazen will they be with like Star Wars Outlaws level. They'll be like, we'll give you like some fan art I did on a napkin while I was taking a shit in between meetings yesterday. If you
that's the
for an extra
like
10
and
cosmetics and stuff will cost you like $10 and stuff. You're just like, why would that be worth anything?
Why? Yeah, why is that worth anything? Fuck you. Who are you?
They're just number. The problem is we as consumers, and I don't believe it's any of us here, but the people that purchase these things are essentially training the corporations to say that this is something that they're willing to pay for, and they're not going to turn it down. To me, the most brazen thing that they do is the game is clearly complete. Here's your release day, and if you pay extra, you can get the game. You can play the game 7 days earlier or something like that. That's like the worst type of money grabbing, because it's clearly ready to go, and you're just charging more people more money to have earlier access rather than just releasing the game as soon as it's out the oven. I hate that shit. And EA are even going. No, carry on.
No, I was just gonna say, like a good example is that Star Wars, how egregious it is. But what frustrates me the most, now look, like you said, a lot of us here are kind of aware of how egregious this kind of business of games is. But to the average consumer, they don't see it, especially the younger consumer. They don't see it. To them, this is the norm, and that's awful.
Right.
Yeah, it's all they know.
The fact, it's all they know, right? So, I mean, when they're sweating and doing a Call of Duty, whose gameplay is this?
This is Zero Master. It's
it's really good.
It's on like the highest level. I watched his Doom Eternal one last night just while I was chilling on bed. And as soon as I typed in Prodeus full walkthrough, his was the first one that came up, and I'm like, I trust that dude's playability.
Oh, I love it so much. So I found the tweet, by the way. A quick aside about before we get into EA. So Prodeus did tweet something out that it seems like they were blindsided, which is another fucking thing. Why are these executives not talking to anybody? All right, it takes you 5 fucking minutes to go to your PR agency and be like, hey, we need to do an internal release to let everyone get enough time to find a fucking job. No. Let's just tell them on fucking Twitter, for example, that they lost all their jobs. Who the shit? How do you sleep at night? I hope you freaking stub your toe every morning. And it's the little toe just on the edge of your fucking bed every single morning for 20 years. And I hope you cry on that last year of that day.
After you step on a Lego.
The answer's easy to that. So stocks and shares are essentially speculative markets. People make up what their value is.
Yes, you're right. I know what you're going to say. You're absolutely right.
So if you tell your team that they're going to be let go next month, that makes its way to Twitter. And then what happens to the stocks? They drop. So this is why
That's exactly what I was thinking. Where I'm from, the output.
Where I grew up, we have a very easy way to take care of bad communication like this. All we do is we thank the person who just fired us for their time, and then it's not our fault if that new Lamborghini that they just bought happens to get piss and shit on it the following day. I mean, who's to say what will happen after that? That would be awful if it was scratched. Et cetera. Not that I would do anything like that.
Absolutely, but, causation is not correlation is not causation.
But it's just, oh man, and these assholes will go and live fucking. You know what the problem is? A lot of these assholes will come here to Dubai, where I live, for like 3 weeks on a holiday after doing something like this, clear their head physically and mentally, and then go and do it all again. Assholes. The point is that when it comes to things, the way that they're behaving with EA, they do these things the way that they. Making the whole monetization for Star Wars is a good example. Outlaws, which, by the way, when that was first announced, I really was excited about. I'm actually an old school Star Wars fan. I don't think they've made anything amazing in recent memory, but besides The one that I didn't play, not Fallen Order, or it might have been that one. I forget.
Jedi Survivor.
That was the one. Yeah. I actually bought that with the intent to play. I haven't played it yet. But besides that one, maybe like I was very keen on this idea with Star Wars Outlaws. The way that they're doing it, the way they're trying to sell it, is egregious. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, it's because we let them get away with it.
Of course.
All right.
Yes.
They and I say we in a very general consumer market sense. Okay, not because like there are a lot of people who will easily see through this crap. But they only do it because they think, oh, we could get away with this. But then they continue to do it because they do get away with it. Okay, and people bitch and complain that, oh, games these days are bad. I'm like, okay, my dudes, but you keep buying the shit. Okay, if you keep buying the shit, they're gonna keep selling you the shit.
Yeah.
All right. A good example. Shame. I really wish Deadforge was here today because I love debating Diablo 4 with him. But because when Diablo 4 released and the way that they released it, Diablo 4 always felt to me like the grindy game. Now, for someone who grew up with Diablo 1 and Diablo 2, Deadforge growing up with Diablo 3 and Diablo 4, he loved Diablo 4, and I was just like, no. It's not the same. How can they want to sell us a pair of horns and wings? Fuck these guys, okay? I'm gonna say fuck a lot, but how can these guys do this? All right, it's ridiculous. Thank you. How can they do this? It's ridiculous. They need to be just playing to win this awesome loot, not the other way around. And The only thing that I really liked about Diablo 4 is now their recent update that looks actually quite interesting. I think it's called Season of Hatred or whatever. That looks like Event Horizons levels of fucked up, and I love it. Okay, so I'm like, cool. I might actually play this one. But the only reason why they do the grinding thing, the only reason why, oh, you got to grind, you got to unlock, you got to blah, 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 and here's this little, it's only a little bit, it's only $1 or something. It's not $1, it's like $10 or whatever the fuck it is. Yeah. The only reason why they sell it is because people buy it. Okay, and I'm not even talking about the whales now, and that's a whole fucking conversation. But they only do it because we buy it. Stop buying this shit and you'll make better games. The companies won't be doing this if you don't engage in their practices. Yeah. It's unfortunately that simple, but it's also that hard because I know it's not a good example. It wasn't Diablo 4. Diablo 4 kind of pulled it back, if I'm honest. But there was this can't remember now.
Was it the store?
I did jump onto it for. Is somebody's store? I don't remember. It was
Diablo
3.
Store. Diablo 3, yeah.
Was it Diablo 3?
Yeah.
Forget whose store it was. It becomes a gambling site, like I said. All right, yeah, you don't have loot boxes anymore, thank fuck, or at least some places. I think Apex still had them, but you start to become this. The main game becomes just an ad for the rest of the store. Yeah. A good one was Halo Infinite, where their store was always updated week on week. I'm beginning to think that Hyfunk is a pretty big fan of Halo Infinite, so I'll be careful. But week on week, they had new products in that damn store, and that thing flashed every single time, and that picture, buy the new shit. Oh, Destiny's good at this. Destiny 2 is very good at this, where before you even start the game, there's 8 different updates of the new shit you can buy, and the new this, and the new that, and the new thing, and the before you can even play the game. And I'm a big fan of Destiny 2's gameplay and story. Even the final shape was very, very good. But, like, holy crap, it's egregious. Like, can you just calm the fuck down for 1 second? You don't need 10,000 employees. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, but I downloaded what's it, Call of Duty Warzone, the first one. Like I think 2 years ago, a friend of mine played it a lot, and I wanted to play, and I thought, okay, him and I are both in Dubai, we can both play on like a Saturday morning, it might be good. I downloaded it, I played it for like an hour, and I was like, my dude, I don't know, this doesn't seem to be working, whatever, the connection's very bad. So I was thinking about uninstalling it. The first thing that did was it came up as like, are you uninstalling it because the game is too big? Please consider uninstalling just these parts of it. And I'm like, no, fuck you. Why were these parts even there in the first place? And it's mostly just languages. And I'm just like, you know what, Warzone, Call of Duty, get fucked. That's not how you have a game. You don't give me a 1 terabyte, whatever. I think it was like 100 gig game. You don't give me that shit. And then only as I'm uninstalling it, you're like, oh, don't uninstall it. Just uninstall these parts that you actually were never using anyway. Holy shit. What a waste of resources in the first place. Fuck you. I just uninstalled it on principle. And I had to tell my friend Obi, I was like, we're going to find something else to play. And we never did, to be fair. But like, it's just unbelievable. And this is the bullshit. This is the fuckery that they get away with. And I don't understand it. When we have amazing studios that are the biggest that they'll ever be is 10 people, and they put out amazing games. a game that I was looking at recently. Cherry. Help me. Who was it? Somebody Cherry.
Cherry.
Yeah.
What was it? Do you know who made it?
Cherry?
Stone Cherry? No.
Just seen it. Oh my god.
Stone Cherry. These are all bands.
It's a 3D platformer.
Cherry O'Board.
Celeste. Who did Celeste? Yeah.
Oh, don't know. I'll have a look. I tried playing Celeste and I legit thought that it was too hard and gave up, and I just felt ashamed of myself.
It wasn't Celeste. Okay,
what?
It wasn't Celeste, but it just has
Catherine. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm just gonna use. What was that?
Is it Catherine? Maybe that other game that kind of feels sort of seductive woman.
I'm sorry.
Persona-ish or whatever. I don't know. I don't know that much about either one.
I'm so sorry. I've been chewing up 2D platformers all week.
Yeah.
And for the life of me,
what's the most you ever spent on a game in terms of in purchases?
I think the most I've ever spent on a game was I bought the Doom Eternal Golden Deluxe Edition before it even came out. So I bitch about people doing this shit, and I did exactly that.
I don't know. There's only one game in my entire life that I've ever played full price for on release day, and that was Doom Eternal. The hype with that was too much, and I couldn't. Even when the DLC came out, I was sat at my laptop refreshing the page, waiting to see if the DLC was available to play. I was all in 1,000% on that, and I think that if you're really looking forward to that game, or you really enjoy that game, that's perfectly fine to make those purchases. I think that there should be a cap on what you're allowed to spend on a game, $60-$70 or something, and B, any purchases in it should be something that doesn't affect your ability to play the game. So they should be cosmetics, new modes, all of that sort of stuff. But
I agree with that.
Like when Doom Eternal came out with the Horde mode, I would have actually paid extra for that because it was an entirely new experience to play within that. So I would have been cool. But, fucking Skyrim...
Look, I think you make a good point there, mate. I think the difference, and this is maybe a conversation that needs to be had. What is the difference between paid DLC or whatever the case may be, and I know it's a bit old school for the youngsters, but expansion packs, okay? Because for me, an expansion pack is a new experience added onto the base game.
It is.
It's not a. Yeah, it's not it's not a sequel. It's like for example, we make Prodeus, right? And they're like, okay, cool, Prodeus is awesome. Here is the the blue area expansion pack, whatever, that came out a year later. Nothing to do with the base game. It's to add to the game, okay? Which is a separate gameplay experience. It's not about holding content. It's not like saying we had two games and we cut it in half potentially. And I think that's the difference. It's like who was it? Actually, I think it was Deadforge. Didn't Deadforge say that if Doom 2 felt like the expansion for Doom 1? Where they're just basically same game, but they just added more sprites.
It is, yeah. It's a 32 map pack, basically, isn't it? Really, it's
right.
Yeah.
It really is.
Unlike Doom,
Team Cherry.
Oh right, okay.
It was Team Cherry, and they did Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight, yeah, Hollow Knight. Doesn't that have? Is it a sequel or an expansion coming out?
So they have been threatening a sequel for called Silksong.
Silksong,
for the longest time.
Yes, because he's got the pointed head. Yeah, I always get hollow games like that. Platformers, for some reason, for me, they all kind of blur in together. So like Hollow Knight, Dead Cells, Shovel Knight, they're all kind of Celeste. They kind of feel the same for me. And I find it odd that when I said that Celeste was too hard, and that's because I find platformers hard. Which is odd because that's what every game when I was growing up was, because everything was a side scroller because that's, the technology at the time. And they were hard as shit. They really were. And I never got past it. But on Prodeus, the expansion, was it something Veil or something like have they tweeted out what's happening with that? I hope that hasn't been cancelled.
No, you know what, I'm looking at the tweet now. They haven't mentioned any cancellation.
Oh, good.
All they have said is we are not sure what will happen next. but we will keep the community update as things change or affect the game. And the new expansion that they're trying to do is the Elder Veil, which honestly looks so good.
Yeah.
It looks so good, yeah. I mean, you know what? I talk too much. I rant too much. Hi, Funk. What do you think about all this drama?
Okay, get me off mute so I don't chew into the mic too much. Where did we land? Because Noah weighed in on our
I don't know where we landed. I think I just ranted for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I guess one thing that I got left on the table or whatever was the idea that we're not really punishing these corporations in any way that matters. It's one thing to give up, on that one game, but it's kind of like, did you give up on a game you were really going to play anyway? It was essential, and they kind of know that, which is sort of the crux where you can't just bully them into leaving you alone, because they're going to do the needle just enough over here to where it's offensive to you, but you still can't really go, well, I'm not going to buy that game. That's my series, And they've even gotten bold enough where did y'all see that Life is Strange double exposure?
I didn't. What happened?
Thing that they did. So that's an episodic story-based game, right? It's not going to be
it has like a battle pass or something.
Kind of, yeah. So you can
fucking Life is Strange.
Some egregious, $10 more to get it like 2 days early or something, or 2 weeks early. Actually, 2 weeks early. Sorry, if it was 2 days, that might even make more sense. Not from a price standpoint, but just like from a. But yeah, 2 weeks, and people are like, I'm going to turn off my entire Reddit. I don't want you to spoil this for this because of all these idiots buying in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't feel like that's really anybody's problem that you might get spoilers. That's sort of a weird thing. But it is sort of just a side effect of what alternate universe are we in where that it's necessary. It's just such an obvious. Like, it's not a multiplayer game where you're like, oh man, I cannot wait to get in here and make that progress and do all my unlocks. It's just like, play this game faster. Because you might fall. You might want to do that. You might just pay for the.
I hope
it's just such a silly like.
I hope that it's not
like crime in a way, but it's like why try?
Yeah, I'm hoping that it's not a Skyrim horse armor moment where it starts something new. Like suddenly, AA developers out there start taking on, maybe we should do a battle pass and, charge early, that sort of thing for it. And that seeps down to kind of indie developers. Because really what you're doing at that point is that you're creating a whole game. You're splitting the game up and then monetizing each aspect of what you've split up to see what you can do to maximize the revenue that you can generate from it. It's clearly a strategy that works for these guys. We are in the minority and that we're kind of old men shouting at clouds because we're the ones putting our foot in the sand and saying we're not going to pay for this shit because we remember a time when it didn't exist and things were genuinely better.
Exactly.
But for the new generation that don't know that there's actually a business model out there that you pay for a game, download it and you play it and that's all that happens. It's like they don't understand.
Well, honestly, I don't mean to punt myself here. This is why I want to make my own video game, okay? Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I want people to have an amazing experience like I did when I was younger and have these beautiful stories to tell their friends and experience with their friends and family and whatever, and then actually sit back and be like, oh, that was $20 or $10 or whatever it's going to be, and that's it. That's a beautiful experience, and it's done. Lovely. Life goes on. You have this great story to tell. Yeah. You know what I even want to do? I'd love to make a mobile game that is completely free, that should be paid for, that has no microtransactions into it, just to piss other game developers off that do that do mobile games. Okay, just to show that it can be done. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Like you say, I might just eventually be evolved into Eustace Bang from Courage the Cuddly Dog, and just be just be that angry man that sits over here in his little study with his computer and just gets upset all the time. Fine, okay, but I really just think there needs to be a change. But I honestly don't know where this ends up because we're not in a great place economically anywhere. So I don't know how long they can keep milking people dry until there's a critical point where there just isn't any more. I mean, we saw it now with how many live service games that they started to produce. Ubisoft had like 6, and then AAA did like 12 or whoever cares. And fine. But then there is a point where there's only so many gamers. There's only so much money in this market. And I know that the argument can be made is that, yes, but there's a lot of money. And there is. But the psychology of a gamer, like, look at, you can only have one person play so many live services games at a time. Okay? Then it's saturated. And it's probably going to be like maybe 2 or 3, if we're honest with ourselves.
That's what
I mean,
was
you guys
say.
know for a fact, how many boomer shooters and games and retro games have we had in the last 2-3 years that all 3 of us still haven't gotten to? And Hyfunk plays more than just that. Hyfunk plays awesome, long-tailed, narrative-driven games that must take him forever.
I got a list.
List
I made and the order in which I need to finish them as well, because they're the order in which I paid for them. I'm putting my foot in the sand and like, you know what? Everyone says they're going to go through their backlog. I'm going to fucking go through my backlog. And this is what I was saying. I need to make my way through Sprawl, then it's Rathion of Ruin, then it's Sulaco, and then I can move on to whatever. I literally just finished Forges of Corruption just because I started it. And I was like, you know what? Fucking hell, it's just a DLC. You know, maybe I can I'll put in half an hour here and there and then finish it. But yeah, I think it's I interrupted you. What were you talking about? Sorry.
I was trying to compliment Hyfunk, and don't worry, I've been interrupting all.
It's all good. Hyfunk is the man, and Deadforge as well. I would say as well, and that I've started. I don't know if I should cut this out. All right, I'm gonna put an indefinite pause on.
Lay it on me.
I'm going to put an indefinite pause on HyperVerse. This is something that I've decided to do. Yeah, primarily because my interest in gaming is literally exclusively boomer shooter, and so now I have a brand. You know, we do the this podcast for it, so I kind of almost don't have a use for HyperVerse to satisfy my gaming media needs. So I'm thinking of selling that off, but. Going on from that, once it was split and this concentrated on boomer shooter, HyperVerse became like a generic sort of indie AA gaming media network, and it was far more akin to what someone like Medium does, where there is a wider scope of things. And I keep finding that as much as I keep trying to get out there and enjoy the wider scope of things, and you know potentially do videos like Hyfunk does. It's not there. I keep getting dragged back to the newest boomer shooter because this is what my love is. So I'm kind of, it feels like I say this every episode that I do kind of compliment you guys and say that you're great at what you do and that I can't do it and stuff. But that is the genuine case. Yeah.
I mean, best of luck to that move. Honestly, like I get it as well. I know, like personally, just a quick. Again, we're complimenting the gents in the room over here, and I listen to Hyfunk's work every day when I come home from work. It's like this really great long form. That's also for the record. This is also why I give Deadforge so much shit, because he has shorter videos than Hyfunk, and I'm just like, right, could you just like times 10 your length of your video, and then I can listen to you both on the way home. No, jokes aside though, like I mean that if that's what your passion is, that's what you got to do. For me, or you were mentioning it earlier about platformers being so difficult, but I really love, and this is the thing, I started off doing Doom. Well, technically, I started off doing Halo, and then I went back to Doom because I just love Doom too much, and then it started doing like Doom and boomer shooters, and now I'm sitting here where I'm just like, you know what? I kind of understand that the videos and the games that I'll be showcasing on my channel is kind of just going to be games that people like me enjoy, which just happens to be edgy platformers and edgy boomer shooters and things like that. It's a very similar audience, maybe not always the same, and I respect that, like yourself, Rob, because it's like, yeah, but I came here for boomer shooters, and that's totally chilled. But the same guys who like Prodeus here, for example, also the same guys that love the dark aesthetic of Elden Ring, for example.
Yeah,
you know, maybe not as avid gamers, to be fair, but we're not binary, and we're not flat one-sided gamers. You know, we kind of like a bit of spice with our food, you know. So even though for me as my channel, I'm probably always going to be doing Doom and boomer shooters and retro it's just what I like to do. But you know, from time to time, a bit of Blasphemous is not going to hurt anybody because that shit's awesome as well.
One of my most anticipated games coming up isn't a boomer shooter, and I would like to see more coverage of it. It's called Necrophosis, and it looks so fucking good. And I played the dev's previous game, The Shore, just to kind of get me in the zone, you know. And it's like Necrophosis is the desert horror game he's done, and The Shore is like the watery Nordic game that he's done. And
wow.
I would love to see things like that get showcased more, because even though we love boomer shooters, I think as a whole we just tend to like first person games, regardless of the genre. We happen to like shooting games. Like first-person horror games.
I see where you're coming from with that.
First-person horror games can still have an element of weapons and combat and stuff like that. The term boomer shooter is it's a little narrowed, whereas I think the term first-person game is more applicable to what we do.
G-Man Lives focus. That was always kind of a cool thing where he'd branch off and he'd do Condemned, or he'd do Into the Gloom, or. Yeah, the couple other those little indie first-person games that were.
Oh, by the way, I really liked that episode. For the record, chaps, I really enjoyed that episode with your chat with G-Man Lives. I really did.
Yeah, it would have been great had it not been for my shit audio. That's the only thing that every time I go back and I watch it, I think it's because we as creators are very self-critical of ourselves. We see the things in terms of how we create something that maybe someone watching it doesn't see. But
Rob, you were speaking now then about, like, you mentioned horror, you mentioned first-person horror, but I have to admit, Hyfunk's video on Signalis, okay, now, I would think Signalis is a bit of a horror, but it's not a first-person shooter, but I'm pining to play it, and I love my boomer shooters and my Doom and my Quakes, but I can picture myself putting a lot of energy and time into that beautiful game, you know, and I really, and that's for me, so for me, I'm always like, and you know, like I say, if you're going to be moving in HyperVerse away and things like that, I only wish you more power in your future and how you're going to be creating all these things. It's always fascinating to watch from afar. But for me, I'm just like, yeah, I want to do a Signalis video like Hyfunk. That's so cool. It's such a great game. You know, I mean, my own way, obviously. But I love this shit. I think it's just, I don't know, man. I suppose I was the heavy metal emo guy at school, and these are the games I ended up playing. You know, heavy metal in my own headphones. I didn't outward look like that, but you know, it was a thing. But for real, I think just, you know, make these everyone can make a review video and everyone can make an analysis video, I suppose, at the end of the day. But if we're just approaching it with our own personalities and styles, I think that's what makes it special and unique. And I think Hyfung mentioned about like the low effort stuff that's coming out a lot these days. It's so frustrating.
Give me an example.
You know, when you're trying to.
Give me an example of what you mean by low effort, because when you were talking about it, I was like, I kind of understood what you were talking about, but I couldn't think of any kind of examples out there of it. So when you say low effort, what do you mean?
No, I best not. I'm not going to give an example.
Well, we don't have to name names.
No,
I can name the type of content
this
that it
is
like
what
it
I mean.
feels like. Yeah. To me, and people I've even liked in the past, I feel like are getting a little bit too comfortable with let me just kind of turn on my mic and just kind of tell you all the things in a row. Just generally speaking, it's kind of like what I was doing, except I was trying to find every good take and sort of tell a good story through with it and kind of give everybody the best information, because a lot of the best information, that guy that went a little farther and found something in the Internet Archive that nobody else did, they just read the Wikipedia or something. That's always fun to see that extra bit. But you've got people that sort of turn on their mic, give you the boring scoop, and then they're done. They're kind of like punch the clock and they're out. That's one type where it feels like you're in the right mode, but there's just there's no takes. That's probably my main thing. There's no specificity to what you're saying.
Because what the impression,
and there's what is your opinion of it? Like, what is that? What's the point? You're just telling me basic. It's not even value judgments. It's sort of like Doom Eternal is a tactical FPS where you're required to switch weapons and use different tactics, and it's sort of like,
it gives no insight into.
I just realized.
Do you engage with that, or are you just recognizing that's probably what that is? Because it's sort of a back of the box, like, Give me some experiential, revelation that you've
I
had or
actually have
that
to
you
agree
did
with
not
this
have.
completely. I know where you're coming from with that. Sorry, Rob, I'm just going to quickly, before you jump in there. I've been following this particular channel for quite a while, and I can say they're not in our immediate community, but I was very disappointed when they reviewed a game that I had recently spoken about, but got it completely wrong. They called it something that it completely wasn't what it wasn't, and then I listened to it again. I was like, wait, they've just read the Steam update, like the Steam description, and they've added a few extra words to it. And I sat there and I was like, oh, like you said, Hi Funk, what's on the box? And I was like, well, I mean, okay, I could have just read it, I guess, but fine. And that's what I think low effort for me would be, is just like, yeah, we could all have read the wiki, or not on the Wikipedia page, but or the Steam thing. But what more than? What more than? And I think for me, I recently spoke about trying to do more game analysis than just reviews, which I think is more my. I was doing it anyway, just without even knowing it. We're just calling it a thing now. But the whole thing with that is like, okay, part of analysis is playtesting. Okay, you actually have to play the fucking game to really, in my opinion, to have a bit of understanding of what you're talking about, rather than just reading the Wikipedia, as High Funk said.
Yeah. See, when you were talking about low effort, the immediate thing that came to my mind were those videos that are like the untold truth about Indiana Jones, and then they just list off fucking facts off a Wikipedia entry. So this is what my impression of what low effort was. So I understand now that you've explained it. Really what it comes down to is analysis. Are you just covering the game on a superficial level, kind of like what we had to do with HyperVerse because we only made 2-minute videos, or are you actually making a 10-minute video where you're breaking down the structure of the game and then going into an analysis of each one, rather than just talking about what it is? It's you can say Doom is a first-person shooter, and it's like everyone can fucking tell that. But tell me about your background with first-person shooters. What is it about those particular genres that actually appeal to you and that sort of thing? Tell me about you as a creator and your experience with it.
It's kind of like the difference between small talk and like somebody finally kind of revealing a bit of themselves to you. It's not that they're saying anything inherently wrong, and this is just one type of low effort content. There's other just so much more obvious ones where you're kind of like, the Silent Hill 2 story that everybody seems to have, and like I'm not trying to like say that they haven't had it, but it's always like they kind of know that people are they've seen 80 other white guys talk about it and go, my life was really hard once, and it's really brought this, it just touched me. And you're kind of like, I mean, it probably did, but like, how many times am I going to hear the same thing to where it's like, I don't feel like I'm seeing you. I feel like I'm seeing you sort of seeing that everybody else is like you, and you can kind of fit in, and you'll just continue the incredible. And it's like such an obvious topic. Signalis was an obvious topic like that for me. That was just me trying to take it seriously. I took it as a challenge to figure it out, which did not work. 3 to 4 months of reading and watching everything, and I was like, I'm gonna make this happen, and that still felt kind of generic to me. But
I have so much respect for that process. That's brilliant, dude. For the record.
I was like, well, I'm already this far in. I better complete it out and do the best I can.
Yeah.
But you do make an interesting point, though, man. You do make an interesting point, though. Like, everyone has heard their Silent Hill story the same way everyone's probably heard the same Doom story, and I nearly didn't make my own Doom video about it because of that. And another creator reached out to me, or somewhere along those lines, and they're like, yeah, the thing is, at the end of the day, your current audience hasn't heard you say it. They've heard G-Man say it, and that's fine. They've heard Civi say it, and that's fine. We all love those videos. But they haven't heard Hyacsho say it, and maybe they want to hear Hyacsho say it. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see how that goes. Because, I mean, the story is... I mean, in my story, it was a little bit different, I think. But a lot of the time, like the Signalis story or like the Silent Hill story, it's going to be very similar in some ways. But sometimes your community just wants to hear it from you in particular. They're one of their favorite creators, and I think there is some merit to that. Although I do hear what you're saying. It's stopped me from making a shitload of videos because I always think, what am I going to say that hasn't been said? I don't have anything.
Well, I'll just interject and just clarify what I was saying. That's more from I'm watching the 100th version of this. It's not. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't pipe up, because I'm very much a proponent that it doesn't matter if you think there's too much saturation. Go ahead and tell your version of it, because you're the only you. All that kind of stuff.
Fair.
I was just saying from a consumer standpoint, if I'm going in there and trying to find something interesting to talk about, you kind of know what mode it's going to be in. You're kind of like, it doesn't feel as transformative if everybody's been transformed and it's all kind of the same elements. That's not their fault. That's just the limits of being able to relate to somebody else's experience or something. I don't know. So that's all I was saying there.
Yeah,
No.
Make everything all the time.
Yeah.
What happened there? Did something crash? Yeah, I'm good. Sorry, am I back? Is that all right?
No, you never left.
Oh, that was weird. Sorry. My
That's like, what did I miss?
I heard everything, but my whole browser just that was so strange.
Yeah. Mine does that every once in a
We're
while.
fine.
It will flash black and then it will like reload all the tabs back on and stuff. So
I mean, guys, when it comes to, sorry, I know, like we're having, you know what I love about our chats is that we tend to not have a major script, but we always talk about something, don't we? But like for example, the way I've been approaching it, and I know this is over time, I've already started adapting the framework, I guess is the right way to say it, to my videos. I'm making a video right now about Kill the Man in the House. Have you guys heard it?
Nope. What's it about?
Good. Good. I'm glad. This pleases me greatly.
Yeah.
Kill the Man in the House. It's currently on a demo. And I'm making a video about it now, and I'm really enjoying putting it together. And I've like done a bit of research because obviously, we've been doing it for a while and I know how to review a video, but how do we get deeper into the analysis, the mechanics, the aesthetics, how does it what are the dynamics? Apparently that's a thing. Blah, 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 blah. So I've started to really analyze this game, and it's currently in demo. And I loved breaking it down. I love talking about how the mechanics apply to the aesthetic and what the intent of the creator is, but the experience that I had. And I think as a group, that little group that we have is just like, we've all discussed that conversation of like, yeah, but the dev's intent and the consumer's or the player's experience might differ, and that's important. Sure, the dev may have wanted A, but the players have experienced X, and that's worthy of note. You know what I mean? And I think having that approach to say, oh, these are the mechanics of the game, this is what I experienced, these are the aesthetics, this is how I see them coming together. I think the developer's intent was this thing, but this is also what I experienced at the same time, which creates again this mixture between analysis and review. And I think the review part of it is always just like, well, did I enjoy it or not? Yes or no. But I think the more important thing is those takeaways of like you're actually able to sit back and see in this game in particular, Kill the Man in the House. It's an extremely poignant power trip at the end of the day. Whether or not that was the intent, I don't know. But what you get as an end result is basically one man with a gun, intent on killing a man in the house, and you go and do that. And this video is sort of that. It's not a very long video, which I'm happy about as well, because I tend to go on quite a lot. I say this, but like Doom Eternal's trailer was like 2 minutes long, and I ended up making an 11-minute video. It's fucking insane. But yeah, so I'm looking at doing more of that kind of thing, where we're actually looking at these mechanics and how they all come together. But not necessarily, I don't know if it's the right way I'm pitching it right now, but not essentially shitting on anybody necessarily. It's very easy for me to look at a thing and say, I don't think this works. And that's totally fine. You need to be saying shit like that, while at the same time also not, I think the word maybe chastising is a bit dramatic, but not utterly destroying the person who created it, because I don't know if it's that fully necessary.
Criticism.
Yeah, more just saying, hey, I don't think this fucking works, and I don't know about your experience, but this doesn't work for me, or it did, or whatever the case may be. Regardless of the developer's intent, the developer may have intended you to walk around this block, but you ended up jumping over it. I think that's a happy accident at the end of the day, for example.
Yeah. Your Phantom Fury video, I mean, you did 2 videos. I remember it was strange because the first one was very positive, and then you played the full game, and the second one was negative. And I was like, it's strange how, once you've had the full experience, how your perception of, how it is can change, and then you can go back. It wasn't really, you didn't put out a review per se, you put out your feelings on that game and sort of thing, which I mean, yes, it's a review, but it was more Hyacsho's interpretation, Hyacsho's take on that game, what he felt about it.
I think, sorry, Rob, I want to just make sure everyone clear on this whole thing, because I don't like shitting on video games necessarily. like we always talk about it. We just spoke a whole at length about how these horrible executives are getting people to lose their jobs, people with families and lives and things, and they're sitting on a golden parachute. And I'm aware of that kind of thing. And for me, there's a line where you can be objectively critical and constructive with your feedback, and I think that's completely fair.
Yeah.
You can inject your emotion into it, 100%. But when you start getting maybe personal, that's where I'm like, that starts to put me into a place where I'm just like, I don't feel this is nice. And I know, like, maybe I wasn't. A friend of mine reached out to me and said, like, actually, no, that review on Phantom Fury was actually pretty fair. I'm like, really? Because I feel like shit. you know,
that's your
like,
job,
I
though.
hate that. I know.
That's
That's
your
why
job.
I'm changing the way I make videos.
if and it goes back to what I said before. If you want us to shill for you, make a game worth shilling for. If you make a game that is
Fair enough.
poor, then
Yeah.
that has to be reported back in a constructive way. You know, what is poor, so that it can either be improved upon, you know, through patches or etc., or the experience learned from when they go on to their next game. Part of me does feel, though, with Slipgate Ironworks is let's say repeat occurrences of releasing games that are not meeting expectations. Part of me thinks that I don't believe that it's Slipgate Ironworks at all. I think that it's the mistakes are being made above their head, and they're the ones that are just kind of the front for it, and they're the ones receiving the shit because there are far too many talented devs working there for it to
What
put
an
out that
idiot clown take.
I know it's clearly they have deadlines that are imposed upon them, and they just want to do their job, and the games are being pushed out before they're ready in the oven. So this is why I was, you know, it's if you're providing constructive criticism, then you know you can't be giving shit to Slipgate as if they're the problem. But that's my personal thing. I do think that it is a 3D Realms problem. You know, so I was very surprised when you brought out the second video, and it was a negative is too strong a word. It was a
fair. It is what it is. It was negative. It was quite negative.
Unsatisfied.
Because you started off even on your live stream.
Yeah, I started off very positive. Like, I mean, I was like, because I try to approach videos as in doing a impressions video and then a complete video, like while I played the game. So as I started the game, make a video, and then when I'm finished with the game, make another video to follow up with it. And it was a approach that I took from Mortismal Gaming. And I like his stuff. And I thought, oh, that's very cool. And to be fair, Mortismal has very often repeated himself in saying, I do this full time. I have the time to do all this. I can make many a video. Please do not do this, etc., etc. Be careful. I don't have much of a life outside of looking after my son and this work and whatever. And he's very good that way. And I sat back and I'm like, yeah, I don't have enough time to do all this. So the Phantom Fury was the last format of that style. But that's why I did it, because, and it's crazy, like you say, to think it started off so well and it ended off so poorly for me. And I don't know why, but it just did. I do know why. I'll maintain that opinion where it felt like they tried a lot of things, or somebody somewhere, they had some version of this game where they intended on going off and finishing a lot of those ideas, which felt never panned out or never fully explored, or whatever the case may be, which is just sad at the end of the day. And that's why I honestly, it actually hasn't done very good. The Impressions video did much better, but I think that's also why that video didn't do too well. It's because everyone knew that it was going to be disappointing. I was just validating something everyone knew. But yeah, it's strange, man. It's strange to see how but we got to learn. We got to evolve. And for me, I'm just trying to make video content around these games to try and help if I can, but also at the same time, like I say, when you start to understand the mechanics and the styles and the tonality and the intent of a game, then it becomes more constructive. Then it starts to become more useful, and I also think more interesting for players, where you're able to say, oh, well, I didn't actually think that the double jump on this game made a lot of sense until you explained it, that it should be applied to combining with a slash or a dash mechanic or whatever the case may be. Then suddenly it starts to make sense, because you're going through this entire movement or power fantasy or whatever the case may be. Now when you start to understand the mechanics and you start to analyze a thing, you're like, you have a much better appreciation for it. And that's something my English teacher and my English professor used to speak to me a lot about was, yes, we're analyzing these books, because I actually brought it up in school, where it was like, don't you think analyzing books to this degree spoils them? And then my teacher countered with, no, it makes you appreciate them more, because now you understand every little thing that went into them better, so you can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And a good example, a hot take, like there's some things in Sulaco, for example, I don't think make a lot of sense to me mechanically, but they're there and they exist, but they're overshadowed by 100 other really great things in Sulaco. And that's always an interesting play. So when you start looking at it from an analysis point of view, and you say, okay, this is a first-person shooter with a lot of movement and that kind of thing, then why can't I run? You know, for example.
Yeah.
I'm probably not gonna talk deeply on that, but do you know what I mean? So it's also, but then when you say, why can't I run? What did the developer want me to do otherwise?
Yeah.
And then when you start to look at that analysis and you start to go through it, if the conclusion is no, the developer's just a fucking idiot, then so be it, right? But and when you start looking at it another one, you're like, oh, actually, it's not that they don't want me to run, is that there's a fuckload to go through in this map that they need me to check, secrets, items, equipment, whatever. Maybe there's a reason for it, and so forth. And that's the way I've been trying to approach a lot of my videos lately, especially if you look at Reverend with DOSman Games. That was pretty legit. But I looked at it from a different point of view.
Yeah, it's a great. He's going to be on the podcast. So we've booked him in for, I think, in some like 2 months or something like that. He messaged and was like, "Can I come on?" And I was, yeah, bro. You know, I put it out to the guys.
Cool.
But had it been someone who would, I have been reached out to by people where I do feel that their games are like, you know, and I have to politely kind of decline them. And it's not because I'm not supporting the indie devs and that sort of thing. And I do feel that everyone, of course, you know, deserves really their opportunity to do so. But you can tell when something is legit and when something is, they just want a bit of publicity for their little side hustle at home or something. and Revel was like, you can tell. And with DOSman Games, of course, you know, with the Flash of the Blade X out as well, you can tell this is like a full-on, we're in this for life and we're going to make this thing the next big thing. And I feel that needs to be supported. So both of them are just both of them are really decent guys, of course, you know.
They really are, aren't they? It's such a great energy. I love them so much.
Yeah, we got a little group chat because HyperVerse did one of our 3-day event things where we did like 8 pieces of content dedicated to them. So there was a lot of to and from conversation. You know, I did work, they approved it, and all that sort of stuff. And getting to know them was a pleasure. I'm trying to get Sam onto the podcast. He was one of the few people that the first people that I asked when Medium and Deadforge and I, we kind of putting together our list, you know, at the very beginning of, you know, who we could invite on. And he was one of the people on there, but this was because of his involvement in what was the magazine?
Concrete Visions? Oh, Reload magazine?
Reload, that's it. I can't believe I forgot the name. Oh, I feel embarrassed.
Shame.
I know, yeah. It was because of his involvement in that. And I had no idea at the time, of course, that he was going to go into publishing. And I wish him all the best and we'll support them every step of the way because they put out good products and they're worth shilling for, you know. So that would be great. That will, yeah. But I did want to ask a question to you guys. Earlier on when we were talking about expansions, and then again I wanted to ask it when we were talking about Iron Fury because of Aftershock. I wanted to ask you, what was your favorite expansions for boomer shooters? Because we're getting to the point now where boomer shooters are becoming kind of so big that they're actually getting sequels and expansions and stuff, which you don't usually get for a niche genre. You know, it's becoming more mainstream. So what in your opinion are the best expansions out there?
That's an interesting question. You go first, Hyphunk.
The least experienced and move on up. To be honest with you, I played a DLC other than Forges of Corruption. That was probably just because I had played it for free on Game Pass, or free. I had played it as part of that package deal and then just decided, hey, why not spend $5 on it to make a video on it or something, just include it. that was kind of in vogue. That's probably the only one recently that I played. I was really hoping you were asking favorite FPS expansions ever. I was like, ooh, I know that. I can do that. Resurrection of Evil or something like that.
No,
And you're like,
you
Boomer
can
Shooters.
talk about that. You can talk about that if you want.
Yeah.
So. Resurrection of Evil is
I hit my mic so many times. Hyacsho made a cool point about, or mentioned a cool thing in expansions being like that mentality that we used to have. That's a good thing. I never really thought about it the way that it's a unique enough experience to justify its existence outside of it. Like you kind of know inherently that's why you're still attracted to it. But my I guess my own internal, like, why do I like expansions is I always felt like there were really good ways to prove out a concept that's small anyway, wouldn't do well over a long course of a game, and then just does this really concentrated form of it. And it's way more fun because it's in that small form. Like, for instance, like the Resurrection of Evil gravity gun. You wouldn't necessarily want to have to pull with that for the 15 hours or 12 hours or however long it would be over Doom 3's campaign, but it's fun as just sort of a novelty. And that's usually the best expansions to me, are the ones that feel like really good. It's really the bite-sized boomer shooter idea. Take the fun ideas, compact them down, and then make something that you want to replay over and over again because it's so well paced. Amnesia the Bunker, conceptually speaking, started out as DLC. I just played that, for instance, and that's a really good game that feels a lot bigger than an expansion or a DLC. But it's not nearly as long or as complex in a lot of ways, and yet you can sit there and replay it, and it's the exact same idea. So you can tell, okay, that started off as paid DLC for Rebirth and really became an expansion in a lot of ways. So yeah, if we could kind of get back to that mentality, I feel like that is kind of the balm for the idea that because you know that the market is there, you can just sit there and just punch it in the jaw and see how many hits it'll take, kind of idea.
I mean, that's
and the meme about they'll pay less for ugly graphics, people who work less time and get paid a little bit less, but it's like, well, they don't have to become millionaires for it to be profitable, worth their time, worth the consumer's time. And that, I was just playing, for of all things, Aliens Colonial Marines, because Aliens is coming back in vogue because of the movie, and I actually like that game. Okay, like I'm liking it less the second time than I remember liking it the first time, but I'm sure after patches it's become a lot better. And I was sitting there playing it, and I was like, oh, this is fun. I got all these little challenges in the game and all these different weapons I can play with. And I didn't have to pay for any of them. I didn't have to worry about whether they were parted out or anything like that. And whether you think it's a good game or not, it was nice to have this little closed ecosystem where the game was talking to itself the entire time. And you weren't having to worry about, like, it's like the games talk to themselves, and they're closed systems that work with, and it's not, the world falls away. And it's like, I wish we could get back to that idea that, like, and it's not that there's no game. There's still 10 to 15 games easy a year that you could get. It's not that gaming's dead. It's just that there's even the good ones, like the Alan Wake 2s of the world, still have some kind of, like Sam Lake, for instance, said that he thought the game needed to be longer because that's what people expected. And you can see there's certain places in Control and there's certain places in Alan Wake 2 where you're like,
it's filler.
Okay, how long do I really have to walk to get to this thing?
Yeah, no, I don't.
You can just feel it a little bit. Like, even though it's as good as everything else is in that game, there are some walking sim sections. There's those kind of like guided, like, I'm gonna put my little man, I'm gonna kind of do him like an action figure down the road, and you're just like, okay, like I feel like I'm watching someone play with their toys, like their Legos or something. It's like, just get me to the good stuff. Don't over direct me. Don't constantly stop me and point me at the right thing. Yeah, so yeah, there's all sorts of, even the best stuff still has those little granular, like, they look over the shoulder and go, are they going to hate me if I don't make a 25 hour game? Do I need to have grindable collectibles? Do I need to have, and it's just like, could we stop going through the motions of what games do? Because it's like, it appeals to the most stereotypical version of what we think games are. We've MMO lighted out just about every game. It's all nooks and crannies. It's grinding. It's constant switching out of inventory items, and it's so fraudulent. And now everybody thinks, oh, this is an RPG because it lets me change out my gear or something. It's like, that's not really what those experiences provided. It's not technically incorrect. Like, I can't really like gatekeep the definitions of these things, but we're diluting the meanings of these things, and not just the definitions, but also the value that you get from them, the magic of those. I'll just go off on immersive sims and RPGs and stuff where people are starting to really just take the bare minimum and go, it's one of those. You're like, I can't argue with you definitionally, but it's not going to hold up like those other things are that are really committed to those ideas, and they're not trying to do everything all at once. You know why they're there. They know why they're using those systems. So yeah, I kind of missed that.
It is interesting.
Even in the
I
best
mean,
games
like you
today.
say. No, yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, at the end of the day, it's they need to stop going down the modern game list of things that the games must have in order to be successful. For example, it just seems very. I mean, I get it. As a recovering marketer, it's a case of like you're gonna have the guy in there that says, "Oh, but you should have an extra purple character, for example. Purple characters rate higher on the scale
Purple
or whatever.
cat.
Thus, you must have one." Yeah, a purple cat. A good example, it's a joke example, let's be real, but a good example is if you have a dog in your game that you can pet, it instantly improves your experience. If I look at Exophobia. But you know what I mean? Like, it's like, can I pet the dog? It's like, you can pet the dog. It's like, excellent. I mean, so just a silly example. But I mean, but you were asking me like what would be my best expansion, and I know it's technically again, yeah, we're gonna argue about definitions maybe, but the best expansion in modern times that I felt was Doom Eternal Ancient Gods Part 1 for me.
Oh,
And I was initially going to say something. I was trying to be clever and say, "Oh no, Age of Empires Conquerors. That was the best expansion." But honestly, like I think for me, it kind of right. It kind of expands the core game as it should, without saying there was a game and we cut it up. It was more a case of like we had a core game experience. Here we go, sir. Thank you very much. Cheers. Then like a year later, they're like, well, we gave it a think. We actually think we can add a bit more to it. Here's a additional experience on top of that core experience. Boom. And I think, okay, to be fair, part 1 and part 2, I mean, that could have been one thing, but I think that was a COVID issue. But my opinion is like that is where we had a good, genuine expansion of a core game, rather than taking a game and cutting it up into bits and having DLC later, like Star Wars Outlaws, for example. So for me, that's best one in recent memory. And I think if we can keep doing things like that, a good example is the engine that they used. Okay, dicey, but the way that they built Halo Infinite's campaign. All right, I really enjoyed it. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. The story was fine. I liked the story. I know a lot of people didn't like the story, but I enjoyed it for what it was. I think the world and their built and everything, they had moments where it was a bit empty, sure, blah, blah, blah. But if they came to me a year later and they said, hey, building on that original game, here is another 5-6 hours of a second chapter that we have developed over the last year and a half on the same engine and everything. It'll cost you half the price of the original game because it's not, whatever. And there we go. There's a full experience. You just plug into your original game. There it is. And I think something like that makes more consumer-friendly sense, where now it's giving you the option. If you would like to continue the story and the experience and something new, you have the option to buy it. But you're not saying, hey, is this DLC that if you do not buy it, your gameplay experience will be affected. Your core gameplay experience will be affected. That's where the fuckery starts to come in.
Yeah.
And that's where I have a problem with like pay to win models and things like that. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired, but
it's all good.
That's essentially where I start to have that. Yeah.
For me, the reason why I asked that question is that for me, when it comes to DLC, the Ancient Gods is the gold standard. And that's primarily because you could have separated Doom Eternal from both chapters of the Ancient Gods and said that the Ancient Gods is the next chapter in the Doom saga. It's a 6-hour game between those two DLCs. It has its own beginning, middle, and end as a storyline. And to me, that's what expansions do. They're not glorified map packs. They move the lore on, they move the story on, the gameplay mechanics and that sort of thing, where you feel like you've had an entirely new experience, as an offshoot of the base experience. And as I was thinking that and listening to you guys talking, I'm going through all the DLCs that in my head that I've played, because Resurrection of Evil, of course, is an older one in Doom. And I'm thinking, Iron Fury Aftershock, and there's a Medieval, the Black Labyrinth, the Elder Vale is coming up.
yeah.
The Elder Vale is coming up as well, and I'm thinking to myself, all of these are like top tier boomer shooters. Do I like these expansions purely because the base games are fucking awesome and it's more of the base game? Or are they actually genuinely brilliant expansions, that move things forward and stand alone as their own standalone game, just like what I said then? But I think that
they're built on the original.
Yes, yeah. I do think that Doom Eternal, just as a project on its own, the base game was fantastic. The 2 expansions were fantastic. The Horde mode was unlike any Horde mode that I'd seen before as well. It wasn't just endless waves of something coming at you or whatnot. The way that they didn't charge anyone and you could earn everything. I thought as a project, the Doom Eternal project was everything that we as gamers could have hoped for. And it's a great...
Agreed.
You were right in that it's not one game that is just split up and then it's like pay extra for these bits of games. Every part was part of a next step in the evolution of what that particular franchise could offer you. And this is why I thought the Dark Ages was a bit of a step back. I'm like, the more I watch the trailer, the more I'm into it. I'm coming around to it, but I will never be able to shake off the feeling that it's a game that didn't need to exist. We didn't need a prequel. What we should have had was the next Quake game. What we should have is a Heretic Hexen reboot, something like that.
It's funny you mentioned Heretic, because someone who doesn't like Dark Ages really feels like one. You know what I mean? I was just percolating that joke in my head, and then you had to say it, so I just think that makes sense. Robert,
you know what? The thing with Doom: The Dark Ages is it's unfortunately where I sit with it is that we had a 2-minute video.
Yeah,
that's it. Okay.
In
theory, we know basically. Sorry, what was that?
I said only about a minute of that was actual gameplay. I timed it the other day.
Was,
exactly.
Yeah.
I was trying to use
half was
and I was like, when does the doing stuff start?
And that's really what matters to us as gaming.
You guys know as well as I do is that it's too early. Like we need to get to the game itself. I mean, a few years ago when Doom Eternal was first announced, it was like, how is this ever going? And then they did, and then it was like, holy shit. And the thing is, I think Doom: The Dark Ages needs to mix up the gameplay in such a way that it is trying to distance itself from the movement shooter of Eternal. And I think that's going to really upset a lot of people, because it's already upsetting people.
Yeah.
Which is funny. That if, like you said, 1 minute of gameplay, very upset, not happy.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, that's fine. I just think you need to just chill for a little bit and let's see what happens over the next year or so. I don't think that it's going to be a bad game.
Oh no!
I would love that.
They're going for wide open. You're on the ground most of the time. Waves of people. So to me, what I see is the Doom interpretation of Serious Sam or Painkiller, and I'm 1,000% down for that. The melee.
That sounds good.
I can't think of any melee games out there that are like, absolutely fucking fantastic games.
Maybe they want to they want to make the Doom of melee games, or something like that. I don't know. But for me, look, I think at the end of the day, our expectations are quite high because of Eternal. I think regardless of what happens, we'll get a good game. Period. It's going to be a good game, objectively good. I don't know what will happen. Like, it could all burn down, but it's probably going to be a good game. Will it be?
It's not going to. There is no such thing as a bad Doom game.
That's my thing, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, just like Doom 3, if it's not everybody's game, you're still going to have a lot of people that it's their game. You know what I mean? And I think that when it comes out, there is going to be people who are going to be just hate it, and fine, whatever. But I think they need to keep reinventing themselves. I had a guy that came into my chat the one day, he's like, it doesn't feel like Doom. And I'm like, Okay, so what is Doom really? All right, because we had Doom 1 and Doom 2, which was an arcade game. We had Doom 3, which is a horror game. We had Doom 2016, which was a power fantasy that tried to do a little bit of everything. Then we had Doom Eternal, which is a movement shooter. We had Doom 64, which was basically a horror RPG on the Nintendo 64. Then we had Doom RPG. Then we had blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Then we had Doom VR, which is a VR game, which is technically not Doom. So when you say it doesn't feel like Doom, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Because as far as I'm concerned, there's never been one consistent style of Doom game. Yeah. So besides the fact that it's a first-person shooter, and even then sometimes. So
another thing too, the idea that it's one thing if you think something flies in the face, like you're watching that Silent Hill Ascension TV show interactive choice making thing, and you go, this has nothing to do with the experience that we're used to. It's not remotely reminiscent. It's like a soap opera versus a scary experience or whatever. And then, but isn't it more of a compliment to Doom that it has this many different avenues, this many inflections, and they're like, Doom. I can understand maybe if you're like, nothing about this feels the same, Silent Hill Ascension, but to say that you can't have like these emphases that still retain like a good 75% of at least of just way everything looks and feels and the hierarchies of what you're going to encounter. Fuck off. Like,
yeah.
What are you talking about?
At the end of the day, Doom is there to make you feel powerful.
Yeah.
Okay? You are either the Doom guy or the Slayer, whatever you prefer. Whether it is Doom 1, 3, Eternal, whatever. You are achieving what you set out to do as a Doom game. So when you say it feels like Doom, that's what I think you mean. Does the Doom game make you feel powerful? Do you leave the Doom game feeling, I am the Slayer? You know, do you want to now go for a run and work out for 3 hours, lift weights, for example, like me? You know, like, is that what you get out of it? Because then obviously, like, if Dark Ages doesn't do that, then yeah, doesn't feel like Doom. As long as it does that, it's Doom. Okay, and people will. That's very reductive, I admit, very generalized, but at the end of the day, I can sit here for the next 12 days and argue with somebody that disagrees with me. So I'm fine with someone disagreeing. But that's the way I see Doom the Dark Ages coming in, is that I think it's too early to tell. I'm hopeful. I think it can, to your point, Rob, I think it's in danger of maybe going into a direction I think most people are not going to like. But I'm going to play it on day one. I'm probably going to enjoy it.
I'll be sat there refreshing my page on the buy button, waiting for it. I've already told my missus, I'm like, you've lost me for at least 3 days once that comes out, because I'm going to play it. I'm going to play it and then I'm going to replay it. Thanks everyone for joining us for the Quad Damage podcast and our distinguished guest Hyacsho today. So Hyacsho, thank you very much for joining us again, and of course we hope to see you again at some point in the future, you know, talking about Doom and you know, other boomer shooters that come out really, and you know, the bitches that make corporate decisions, of course. So
it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Pleasure is all of ours. Yeah. So as usual, let's find out where our visitors can find everyone. Hyacsho, where can everyone find you?
You can find me everywhere under Hyacsho, but mostly on YouTube and Twitch.
Medium, where can people find you?
You can find me at the YouTubes at High Functioning Medium, Twitter at High Funk Medium, Patreon at the appropriate website name / my name type of deal.
Nice. Excellent. And you can find me, I'm on Twitter, RobertYap80, and Quad Damage you can find on the YouTubes, of course. You're watching the video, of course you know it's on YouTube. And hopefully at that point, we'll be back on Twitter, because they suspended the account for reasons unknown, and I'm going through the process right now. And you can find the Twitter account.
For sexual content, wasn't it?
Sexual content.
They were like,
I left the camera on that
too
one
rich,
time, man.
Jaws too square.
I was going to say, Rob's very sexy. You know, it does happen.
They were like, I'm going to need you to take those little tassels and tie them up a little tighter, because I'm getting tired of seeing that chest hair poof and just,
Elon Musk himself called me up and he said, no, that's too much even for me. Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah. So YouTube, it's Quad Damage Podcast. Twitter, it's Quad Damage Pod. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. And until next time, keep on booming.
Keep on booming.
Booming.